Howdy, all. As you know from watching this webcast many a time, Russ, I, and Ek are all music people. We all love music, although probably for most of the people who watch this show, we're old fogies and listen to music that you don't like, but too bad. We're on the show, so if you don't like it, turn it off. Um, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame came out with their list of possible inductees, and as they do most of the time when they announce them, they piss me off because half the performers are not rock and roll performers. I mean, and they don't seem to follow the concept that if you're a folk artist or if you're a rapper or a hip hop artist, you don't belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But they're I guess their concept is it's the Music Hall of Fame. They just call it the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's
Right.
But the list came out today, and all apologies to acts like Joe Tex, who I don't know who the hell he is, or oh god, there was a couple the Bad Brains, and I'm beating my brains out trying to figure out who the hell they are. There are certain ones I just rule out, but Russ and I, as big fans of progressive rock, if Yes doesn't make it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this time around, I'm going to make a trip to Cleveland with some balloons filled with white paint.
Yeah, I can't get overly excited until I actually see the vote because they've been duped before. They were very serious candidates when Chris Squire was still alive. So when they eventually get in, and I'm sure they'll get in, it'll be posthumously for Chris, and I'll feel bad about that. I did write an article on Sportsology about John Anderson, though, because I believe he should be in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. And I'll be honest, I like the Songwriters Hall of Fame better because I think it is open to a broader base, and then there is less room for hyperbole. With the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it's all it's all conjecture. It's all like nonsense until it happens. I hope they get in. I want them to get in, but I'm not going crazy now one way or the other.
Well, I'm trying to put my mind in the in the place of the people who make the decisions, and based on how it's sort of like the Oscars. You know that a certain person is going to win not because it's the best performance. It's because it's their time. It's like, and that drives me crazy. Like,
Yeah.
Denzel Washington wins for Training Day when he was in Malcolm X and he was in the movie where he played the Hurricane, and in those movies he was much better in both of them, and he should have won for either one of them, but didn't win and wins for Training Day.
And for music, Yes won their only Grammy for the instrumental cinema. Considering all the other songs they had, that was their Grammy. That was their way of just sort of saying, yeah, we owe you one here.
Well, the Grammys, please. Can you remember when Jethro Tull won for heavy metal? That should tell you enough. Jethro Tull won their Grammy for heavy metal, and they're not a heavy metal band. So anyway, in trying to interpret who's going to win, I can tell you right now, Pearl Jam will win. No, will be inducted. No doubt, because
they're in, no question.
And unfortunately, and not because it's just not my brand of music, but Tupac Shakur does not belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but he will get inducted because
he will be inducted.
Yeah, because of the influence that he had, and I have a feeling somebody like Joan Baez or Janet Jackson will get inducted into because of the same reasons. Janet Jackson because of pop, Joan Baez because of folk.
At least Janet Jackson with the song Black Cat, it was a rock and roll kind of feel. So I would like to see Janet Jackson get in. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Switching to that, because we won't find out the results of that until I think December.
Yeah, whatever. I won't even care. Like it'll be a blip on the screen when it happens, and I won't think about it from now until then.
Yeah, I'll care when they announce it, but until then, yeah, you're right. Fans in Toronto, I'm sure, are not in a celebratory mood. This morning after the Blue Jays Indians Game 3 at what I still call, because I'm old and feeble, I still call it Sky Dome, even though it's the Rogers Center. And the thing was, Russ, you had Trevor Bauer, who talk about the. I think that the drone injury on his finger could be the strangest injury since the Dustin Penner pancake injury.
No, I'm going to say it's the because I'm going to keep it baseball. I'm going to keep it strangest since the Bobby Ojeda chopping off the tip of his finger in the '88 NLCS, right before the '88 NLCS, and the Mets were unable to use him, and he was literally their best pitcher that year. So Ojeda did his gardening, and he just, he sliced it. And so like that's what it reminded me of.
But it was sort of surreal last night because they showed before the game like almost open wound on the outside of Bauer's right pinky, and it had been stitched, and it just looked really ugly and really like it was, and it lasted 2/3 of an inning, and then he was gushing, hemorrhaging blood on the mound. And John Gibbons, the Blue Jays manager, comes out and says, this guy can't pitch because he's getting blood all over the ball, all over his jersey and everything. And I know that on Toronto radio this morning, people were saying he had walked two guys. There were two guys on. You should have just left him out there because he wasn't able to pitch. He wasn't able to have any control. Get the lead and then say, okay.
Right.
But they didn't. He got pulled. And they used, I think, 5 relievers. And it's a statement on the Blue Jays that, in spite of the fact that they used 5 relievers and the first 3 were not great, 5 or 6 relievers, they couldn't score on the Cleveland Indians. This vaunted offense that was fantastic last year and good at times this year is just not shown up.
Yeah, on the show that I do, The Game, we invited Rick Morris on. He's from Cleveland. He does some other stuff. And he has a great show himself, the FDH Lounge. And he was on, and he's a lifelong Indians fan. And we talked at length about the Indians, what they're doing. And I brought up Jason Kipnis. And it just seems like he is like the engine that sort of like drives that team in the sense that he's not their best player, but he is just like an Indian through and through. And these second basemen, now you can go back, Pedroia, like there's always this scrappy second baseman for teams on really good teams that help push them through. He had a big home run. I feel good about the Indians. Not that I feel good that the Blue Jays are losing. You do. I don't care either way, but I'm sort of rooting for this Indians-Cubs World Series. I am. And just because I think the marketing from MLB for that would be somebody has to win.
Well, yeah. Well, right. And the thing is, though, imagine, okay, if the Cubs get by the Dodgers, which is not a foregone conclusion,
no.
You're talking about the manager of the 2004 streak or curse-breaking Red Sox against the general manager of the curse-breaking Boston Red Sox. So, and one team has not won in 68 years, and the other one has not won in 108 years. So one of them is going to be successful at breaking 2 of baseball's longest streaks.
And that's why I think that would be a fun World Series to watch. There's not one person that I've spoken to that doesn't want to see it. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it will be fun. I do want to add that yesterday was, and this is going to make you feel old, 17 years since the Robin Ventura grand single, and I'm wearing my Mets shirt for my Mets book. Numbers don't lie. You can go to Amazon and buy it. But that was a fun moment, too, and that was one of the crazier moments, really, in playoff history, if you think about it.
Well, I don't know if it was yesterday or a couple days ago, was the 13th anniversary of the Aaron Boone home run.
Yeah.
That's, that makes me feel old.
Yeah.
It really does. But, yeah, so, I mean, Francisco Lindor I don't know if he's a superstar, but he's a
big deal.
Yeah, it's funny because, I think you've got 2 of the best future shortstops in baseball. You have Corey Seager in L.A., and you've got Lindor in Cleveland.
Yeah, Lindor is like your better hitting version of Omar Vizquel, right? I mean, Vizquel might be the better fielder, but this guy can really hit. Vizquel hit a little at the end of his career, but it just shows you now that even at the shortstop position, you've got to have some power.
Yeah, and Seager looks like a left-handed A-Rod. He's like 6'4" and hit 23 home runs I think it was 23 as a rookie. So anyway, let's get to hockey, and we present some hockey news today. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Tuesday, October 18th, 2016.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockeybuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Well, there were 4 games last night in the National Hockey League. I wanted to touch on all 4 of them because there were some interesting things that happened in each one of them. At Madison Square Garden in New York, the New York Rangers defeated the San Jose Sharks 7-4, and I believe it was the game-winning goal was scored by none other than Jimmy Vesey. Now, he played well in the preseason. Now he's got a goal in his first NHL game. I know that there was a lot of, from the markets that got jilted by Jimmy Vesey, that there was almost that hope that I hope this guy's a bust because he didn't choose us and he's not all that. And I've sort of my point of view is he's a Hobey Baker Award winner. He's a big kid. He's got some offensive tools. I don't think he's going to be a bust. I don't think he's going to be a superstar, but I think he's going to be a very effective player. And so far, it's appearing he is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I've been getting all kinds of different chatter from people, texts, emails, whatever, about Jimmy Vesey. And the point that I still have to try and make is, hey, he was a media creation as far as the overhyped part.
Right.
Nobody at Harvard overhyped him. I didn't hear Ted Donato say superstar. I didn't hear anybody say superstar. So, so somebody asked me recently, what did I think VC would do? And I said, most years, 35 points. I think that's the kind of guy he is. And that doesn't sound sexy, but he's coming straight from college. He's going into the NHL. He plays a greasy game. He's around the net a lot. He's missed shots already. He could have 3 or 4 goals. He's got 1. And so I think, 35 points means probably 15 goals. And I think if Jimmy Vesey gets 15 goals and the Rangers sign him as a free agent, that's a very successful free agent signing. If he gets anything over that, if he gets 50 points, hey, great. Yeah. But I think once you hit that 35-point mark and you show that you belong in the NHL, that's a success.
And he's playing a top 6 role. He's playing with offensive-minded line mates.
Yeah, and make no mistake, Stepan really set him up for that goal, but you still have to put it in.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like, and there were some people who were thinking, oh, they're going to put him on the 3rd line and he's not going to score anything. No, they're putting him in a position to score goals. And, I'm not predicting 20 goals for him. I'm thinking, the range that you were talking about, maybe, 14 to 18 goals. If he gets 20 goals, my goodness, it's a steal. I mean, you're getting him on an entry-level deal for $925,000 plus bonuses.
Yeah.
So,
now, something that was alarming in that game was there was a play where Brett Burns had Rick Nash behind the net, and he sort of fell on him.
Yeah.
Nash really looked passive in this sequence. Didn't try and get him off. When Burns finally leaves him, Nash's stick is broken. He has to go to the bench. San Jose gets a 2-on-1 shorthanded and scores a goal. I think it was shorthanded. And so I look at that, and Rick Nash did score a goal later in the game. And again, people could say, hey, that was a great setup by McDonough, and I forget who the other person was. It is, but he still has to put it in. So I always give the guy credit. But at the end of the day, Rick Nash has to be way more aggressive than this. Brett Burns was just pushing him around, and that is not a good sign for a guy that you are expecting to be a goal scorer. People think I take these unnecessary shots at him. I'm not taking unnecessary shots. I'm saying he's getting paid X amount, and whether he plays an all-around game or not, and he definitely does, right, he's being paid to score goals. He should be that team's number 1 goal guy, and it's probably not going to be. It's probably going to be Chris Kreider. And people always ask me about Kreider, right? And I always said I felt like he was their best homegrown forward since Jean Rattel, and I really do stick with that. He's a different kind of player, right? He's not as finesse-oriented. He's faster than Jean Rattel, even though Rattel was fast in his day. He's more of a bull in a china shop. But you could see where these gifts, if he plays the game right, he can be a very good player, like a 25-goal guy, maybe even a 30-goal guy. And that's good. And so I think that's been a big thing for the Rangers. Antti Raanta, he had a pretty easy game after a while. I mean, for a while they were coasting, and then San Jose scored a couple late and made it a 5-4 game. That's when things got a little tense, and it became a little bit of a nail-biter. It ends 7-4 because you know how things get fluky at the end of a game. But that's a game where the Sharks could easily just write it off and say, yeah, we didn't play our best game, yada, yada. But it's a good win for the Rangers. And at the end of the day, we could talk about Corsi and other things. People are all interested in that. They're 2-1, and that's the way they sort of needed to start off their season with all of these new players in there. So that's a plus for them.
Now, the one thing I noticed, and then we'll move on to the next game, is that, and I didn't see last night's game, but I saw the game against the Islanders, is that Nash looks remarkably slower. I mean,
He does.
He's always he's a big guy, but he's always been able to skate and keep up with the pace, and he's starting not to be able to do that. And for a big guy, if you start to lose a step, I think it doesn't mark the end, but it marks the end of him.
The slowdown. It's the slowdown now. It's the same thing I saw in players like Eric Lindros and other players when, because of concussions, the motor function seemed to slow down. The first time I noticed it with Nash, and I didn't want to pick on him, I wanted to make sure, and it's good that you noticed it too, is that if the play is deep in the offensive end, if he's there, forget him getting back on defense. It's not happening. But if he sees the play is going deep in the offensive end and he's not there, he's almost turning around to play defense before the play is even over.
He's
compensate.
He's staying high. He's the man high.
Yeah.
The Detroit Red Wings won the last home opener at Joe Louis Arena 5-1 on the strength of a hat trick by Mike Green. Thomas Vanek has started up pretty well, above expectations for the Wings. He had 3 assists last night. First on, Green's an offensive defenseman. We know. I mean, this is not unusual for him, although he's not his numbers.
I saw that Green tagged you on Twitter and said you like that.
Yeah,
I saw he did that.
Oh yeah, I missed that one, Russ. I did. But Thomas Vanek, I mean, after being bought out and being much criticized by certain other people on this webcast, but I can't remember who. He's playing well, and I think Vanek is playing with the desperation that he knows that if he doesn't put up good numbers this year, that his career is over with.
Right.
And after being bought out, this
is a guy with a tremendous skill set. We should never look past that because he really does have that. It's just he's a guy. When I watched him playing NCAA hockey, I saw a potential superstar, and for a couple of years, we all saw that even at the NHL level. And then it dipped. Did it dip because of things that were going on outside of the arena? Maybe, but it just did. And so, yeah, I think he's just wants to, maintain his career.
Vanek was done a disservice in Buffalo because, remember, he was a second-line guy on those teams in 06 and 07 that got to the conference final. And that was perfect for him as a young player coming out of the University of Minnesota, where Briere and Drury were taking over a lot, or occupying a lot of the premium time, and he could be the guy sort of behind the scenes and score 30 goals. Both of those guys left. He had signed that offer sheet with Edmonton, I believe it was, and the Sabres matched it, and all of a sudden he was a $7 million player. And he performed, but what he also did he played when he maybe shouldn't have played. He always played injured.
Right.
I think that's taken a toll on his career because I don't think he's even close to being as fast as he was, and he always played in front of the net on the power play and got beaten up. So, I think that's one of the reasons why he did not perform as well as expected in Minnesota, where he wanted to go to, and that's why I think in Detroit, I mean, if he scores 20 goals, he'll get another contract. He might get a 2 or 3 year contract off of this year if he can continue to perform like this.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see. We'll see what happens there. Talking about that arena, I was there in Detroit for the Winter Classic, and so I didn't get to see a game there, but I got to go to a concert there. And as going to a concert there, I sort of toured around the stadium, and we saw a lot of cool things about the Joe. And so I thought it had a lot of charisma. And just it was a cool place. I thought the feeling of it was great inside, even for a concert, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed how they paid homage to the players, all of it, and so I liked the place. I liked the fact that everybody had a number 9 for Gordie Howe yesterday. I liked the fact that Eriksson started off that game with a fight. That was cool because that's sort of like an homage to the Joe. So I thought all of that went really, really well. I'm going to miss the place. I will.
I'm going to miss the place because that was probably the place of greatest playoff glory for the Maple Leafs in the last 25 years, the Game 7 overtime winner by Nikolai Borishevsky. Sorry, Red Wings fans. But there's very few Leaf glory moments in the playoffs in the last 25 years. But we'll talk about that when we have Kevin on the show, because he's been to a lot more buildings than either one of us. And I have great memories of Maple Leaf Gardens and of the Odd in Buffalo, but he's been to a lot of other arenas, so we'll talk about that when he's on the show.
By the way, I do have to bring this up because Ty brought it up, and he is a member of the show. Candy corn is still the #1 choice for Halloween candy. That is awful. Like, I don't mind eating candy corn once, but after you eat like 5 or 6 of them, there's no point in ever eating candy corn again until the next year.
When I could eat candy without worrying of going into a diabetic coma, candy corn was not one of my top. The circus peanuts one, those marshmallow peanuts.
Yeah,
those I love. Those I could continue to eat.
No, but that's fine. That had a better taste. Ty was making fun of the fact that New Hampshire Tootsie Rolls was #1. Tootsie Rolls are great when you're 5 years old until you realize there's absolutely no real chocolate in it, and then there's no point ever eating them again. But here's a funny thing. So it looks like, if I'm looking at this really small map on my phone correctly, that New Jersey is Reese's. And you know what? Reese's is still good.
Yeah. Reese's peanut butter cups are good. Don't mess with them, though. Don't do the white chocolate.
Yeah. You got to just eat the regular.
Don't do the crunchy peanut butter. Just milk chocolate and the regular peanut butter. Everything is nothing.
And it's perfect. It's perfect.
It's perfect. Don't mess with it.
Yeah.
Okay. The Boston Bruins went to Winnipeg, win 4-1 over the Jets. And Brandon Carlo, who we've talked about on the show before, played 24 minutes and scored his first NHL goal. The funny thing is, Russ, I believe he was the second round pick last year. The 3 first-round picks, Senyshyn, Zaboral, and DeBrusk, none of them are in the NHL, but Carlo is there, and he's playing with Zdeno Chara.
If you remember, I told you I thought that would happen. If you remember, I told you when he was drafted that he was going to be their best defenseman of that draft and probably make it to the NHL before any of them. I'm not shocked. I don't know why people slept on Brandon Carlo. Again, he was a first-pairing defenseman, a kid who works extremely hard. He always covered the other team's best opposition. If you watched him at the Combine, he was great. He was a workout fiend. So even though he was slender, but not weak, he's not weak at all. You knew that there would be some muscle he could put on the frame. He's starting to do that now. People had sort of picked on his speed. There's nothing wrong with his speed, but he's not an elite skater. He's not Duncan Keith or anything like that. But he has all of the right tools to be an NHL defenseman and the right mindset and the work ethic. And I just knew this kid was going to make it. And look, I'll even tell you that in my fantasy league 2 years ago, I traded for him. So it does show you that if I believe in something, I'll follow it up with that. But I'm happy for the guy, and I think this is a tremendous find for the Bruins, and the fact that he's playing with Chara is a good pairing.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like the Twin Towers. I mean, Carlo's, I think, 6'3", 6'4"?
6'3", yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big kid. Chara's monstrous.
Yeah.
So, and if it definitely benefits him to have the experience of Chara.
His first game, he was a +5. Who the hell starts off their NHL career as a +5 in their first game?
And he was a +3 yesterday. So yeah. The other game last night was Colorado playing Pittsburgh, and Colorado wins 4-3 in overtime on a goal by Gabriel Landeskog. Pittsburgh.
Yeah, but wait, don't bury the lead here, because there's another guy in this team who, when he was available in trade, I said that a lot of teams should pick up, and that's Patrick Weirkoch, because I said that he has an offensive ability that was never, ever utilized in Ottawa. He got a nice goal last night, and you saw the way he got that goal. He got that goal because he sniffed out a chance to sort of pinch in there and be a forward and got a nice goal. He could get more goals. I knew when Colorado picked him up, that was a really good acquisition, because that's a guy who was put into a role in Ottawa and now can play a much bigger role.
And that was an under the radar. I mean, they brought in Fedor Tutin after he was bought out by Columbus.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was a great move by him, by Joe Sakic to come in. So let's see here. Last night Crosby and Matt Murray did not play, which it can be used as an excuse for the Penguins. Not performing well. I mean, when you're without the best player in the world. I mean, that could be.
Sure, but Phil Kessel scored, so whatever.
Oh, well, please. I mean, come on. But okay, moving to some news here. The website General Fanager is a resource that a lot of hockey fans and a lot of hockey media use. And
a lot of crying emojis on Twitter last night.
And the thing is, thankfully, when Matthew Weiss died and Cap Geek disappeared, at least this is a happier situation in terms of, General Manager is gone, but Tom Prohaska, I believe I have the pronunciation wrong. If not Tom, I apologize. He has been hired by the Las Vegas team as a hockey operations analyst. So right now, General Manager has been shut down. So everybody, if you want contract information, you have Cap Central on Hockey Buzz, and there are a couple other sites out there as well. But the thing is, Russ, and with the analytics crowd as well, you see the teams bringing in these guys, and the resources that were out there, they disappear because the other teams are bringing these guys in.
21st century numbers crunchers. You need them behind the scenes in teams, and they're looking for these guys. And so, fact is, hey, you know what? They got a very talented guy. He could definitely help them in the early goings there for the hockey ops. I think it's smart.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
I'm always out there as a prospect consultant, just saying,
Yeah. If you need somebody with a big mouth, I'm here. Okay. News this morning, TSN's Darren Drager reported that defenseman James Wisniewski, who, if you remember, blew out his ACL in the first game of last season when he was with Carolina after being traded from Anaheim to Carolina. He got bought out by the Hurricanes, got signed to a PTO by Tampa Bay, and was released from the PTO relatively early in training camp, which had to serve a little bit of a warning sign because, a guy like Wisniewski, if he was close to 100%, I think that would have been a player that Tampa Bay may have held on to as a bottom six guy, but they didn't.
No.
And now he is reportedly going to sign with Boris Astana in the KHL.
Yeah, you know what? He's got to get his career back on track. This is a way of doing it. I think it's a smart way of doing it in the sense that it's an offensive league and he's a guy with offensive gifts. If he could show that he could put up some numbers, then maybe next year he'll get another shot at the NHL. Because right now, after that early exit, there probably wasn't a team that was interested in him now. He's now got to prove himself.
Yeah, he's gonna have to prove he's 100% healthy and prove he can still perform offensively. And if he can do that, then he might be able to snag a job with an NHL team next year. But the problem is, he's 32 years old, and look at the way the league is going right now.
I know. Once you get over that 30, the mountain of being 30, that seems to be the cutoff now where even if you are a good player, you could just fall off it. And what I'm finding is the players that start off their careers in peak physical condition and stay that way are the ones that are doing okay now. Like there's very few like Yager who didn't train for years and then were able to sort of get it going. He's an unusual talent anyhow, so I would scrap him from the conversation. But for most of them, if people weren't great as far as in the off-season conditioning department, it's affecting them. And that's the thing now. In this NHL, it's cliche, right? It's 24/7, year-round. Maybe you get a month off, and you've got to just be on top of your training all year long, except for when you're playing, and the way you eat. And so these are, here's an example. This year with the Rangers, I was surprised to see or hear that Kevin Hayes lost 21 pounds. Now you would think, hey, young player, 21, well, maybe Kevin Hayes wasn't eating right. And so maybe they got to him, and he is now, and he scored a nice goal the other day. Maybe that's going to help him long term. But But it just goes to show you that you really have to have that kind of commitment. I have a lot of fun conversations with young guys, right, that are just in the league, and I say, in rookie camp, well, what do you do to sort of cheat and eat what you want? And they're like, we really don't. The guys that say when I'm in training, yeah, I can eat ice cream and stuff because it doesn't affect me. But they say most of the time they're eating a regimented diet. And I have to tell you, 10 years ago or even 16 years ago when I started my website, that wasn't the case. But it's the case now.
Yeah, and we mentioned Lundqvist losing a lot of weight.
Yep.
And how that he looked a lot quicker or just as quick as he was in his prime in the World Cup. And a guy like Jerome McGinley, I mean, Jerome McGinley is in his late 30s, I believe, and he's not the player he was 10 years ago, but he's still a very effective player in his late 30s. But this league, 5 years ago, if you were 32 or 33, you still, there was still a window for you.
Yeah.
But unless you are in ridiculous shape, 30, 31, 32, you're
in a little bit of trouble.
You're in some trouble. Now, coincidentally, a player who is 32 and is not signed to an NHL contract is former Ranger, former Hab, former Canuck Brandon Prust. But he is practicing and continues to practice with the Toronto Maple Leafs in spite of the fact that he was released from his PTO last week. Now, it's curious, and I have a little bit of this is
like the NHL's equivalent of the scout team, like in NFL.
No, the thing is, and I'm pretty sure when Scott Gomez, when he came back to New Jersey, I believe he hung around the Devils for a week or two.
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah, until there was some trade that was made, and then it cleared a space, and they could sign him to a pro contract. What I think is going on with Toronto, and we'll find out whether it's the case or not, probably in the next week or so, is that the buyout situation regarding Jared Cowan, defenseman Jared Cowan, the hearing with the NHL, between the NHL, the NHLPA, his agent, that whole arbitration situation happens tomorrow, which means more than likely within the next week it will be decided whether the buyout was legitimate or illegitimate. If it's legitimate, he gets bought out of the contract, his contract goes away, the Leafs get a $700,000 credit on the salary cap, he gets $1.5 million over the next 2 years. If they find out that they couldn't buy him out or he was injured, he gets $4.5 million. So there's the reason why Cowan is disputing this or going to arbitration. But if he is bought out, that opens a pro contract, a space. Right now the Leafs are at 49 pro contracts. If Cowan is legitimately bought out, then they're down to 48. I think they're going to sign Prust. I can't understand any other reason why he would be hanging around unless he thought that there was a chance he was going to get a contract out of it.
Right. No, it makes sense. But my bigger question is, so who in the starting lineup would he replace?
Well, I think one of the things is that him being there doesn't mean he has to be in the starting lineup all the time. He's a veteran guy. He can come in. He can be the 13th forward and not keep around a young guy in the press box. Rather have him play. Connor Brown has played very well in 2 games. Connor Brown, in my estimation, seeing him play for a few years in the AHL and him being a former OHL scoring champion, he's not a fourth line guy. He's a top line guy. So right. I don't think it works for him to be on the fourth line, even though he's already scored a goal. So he's got options. He can go down to the American Hockey League without having to clear waivers. I think they would probably send him down, and that Prust would probably be the 13th or 14th forward, whatever they do. So that's what I think is going on here. Otherwise, they would have to waive a guy like Seth Griffith, who they just picked up, and that doesn't make.
They're not going to do that.
No. Okay. We talked yesterday with Kevin and with Eck about the goaltending options, potential goaltending options with the LA Kings, and we mentioned, more than likely it's not going to be the Tampa situation or the Pittsburgh situation because those teams are in contention and they're probably going to hold on to those goaltenders and have that duo for the season. I brought up the Islanders, their 3 goaltenders, or Florida with Red O'Bara down in the minors, but the guys on Sportsnet's Hockey Central brought up the name of Andres Pavelec with the Winnipeg Jets. Now, he was waived before the end of the preseason. His contract is over, or they're close to $4 million, but they get a $900,000 or $950,000 discount by sending him to the American Hockey League. But he's still in Winnipeg because their AHL franchise is in Winnipeg, the Manitoba Moose. But if Winnipeg sees an opportunity to get themselves a little bit of a, real cap relief, maybe paying half of the salary, I mean, do you think Pavlik is a way that LA might go?
It's possible. I mean, they could definitely do worse. I think he could handle the spot. So it's not a bad way to go. I will also bring up that I noticed that Michael Neuwirth is getting another start for the Flyers tonight. Now, again, we're going to keep hearing for a while from Dave Haxtell, hey, this is part of the schedule and whatever, the rotation. But there is no real good reason why you would start one over the other tonight, right? I mean, they played days ago, so it's not like there's a back-to-back situation. So to me right now, it's sort of like, okay, you have now picked Michael Neuwirth at least for your next important start. And to me, that means something. We'll see, though.
Yeah, I mean, the short term, I mean, I will grant X point from yesterday that Mason plays better when he knows he's the guy. When he's not the guy, when he's when he's either sharing duties with Bobrovsky or whoever, then it can be troublesome. But I think that he needs to be the guy, and if he's going to be the backup, and he's making more than Neuwirth, and if Hextall has decided that Neuwirth is the guy he's going to go with, then not to say you may as well trade Mason, but you can use him as an option, use him as an asset.
Well, here's the thing. So, and this will be the kicker for me. They're using Neuwirth for this. They last played on Saturday. They don't play tomorrow, and then I go to the home opener Thursday. If Neuwirth starts the home opener, then you've clearly picked Neuwirth. Like, you could tell me anything you want under the clear blue, right, but I'm going to tell you they've picked Neuwirth. If Mason starts that game, then I'll believe in the rotation for a little while longer.
All right. To end the show, I came up with a little game that we can throw around here. There's, we won't know probably for the next year or two who won this game because it's based on who you think has a longer tenure, will survive longer. I put a list of four pairs of NHL coaches, trying to put together like comparable situations. Coaches have been there a long time, and who you think is on a shorter leash and who you think will get fired first.
All right.
Okay. So first one, I put two Atlantic Division coaches together, Michel Therrien and Claude Julien. Which one do you think will get the axe first?
Michel Therrien.
Okay. I mean, obviously this is based on results, and we're only 2-3 games into the season, but I'd have to go with Therrien, not because. And the thing is, if it's Therrien, I think both of them are going. I think it's going to be both Bergevin and Therrien. I think Therrien.
And this flu's got to be really bad because Carey Price may not play Thursday either.
Wow. Well, I mean, yeah, the conspiracy theorists are already saying it's not the flu; it's a reoccurrence. I mean, they just want to see him in the lineup. I
know. I don't blame him. I mean, it is a long case. There's no question, but we have to take it on face value. But again, may not play Thursday. Go ahead.
Yeah, and the thing is, Julien, there is some school of thought that, he's been there a long time, that hearing the same voice over and over, you start to tune it out. But that roster has turned over remarkably. So, he's not coaching the same players. So I think that buys him a little bit of time in Boston.
I think he's safe for the entire year. I don't know if Terrien's safe for the entire year.
Yeah, and if they have a bad first half, Kai is agreeing with me. If they have a bad first half, then I think him and Bergevin are in deep trouble.
Yeah.
Okay, second one, Willie Desjardins, coach of the Vancouver Canucks, or Todd McLellan. And we brought up Todd McLellan yesterday because of the decision to have the team practice after a loss to Buffalo. Come on, Kaya. Jesus.
Kaya's really upset about this topic. I'm going to go – this is a longer game because I don't think either is going to get fired this year. I don't. So now we're going into next year. I'm going to go McClellan simply because I think it's a hotter seat. I think with Vancouver, it's a situation where they know they've got some young players. They've started off hot here. If they have just a reasonable year, I think Willie comes back. And I think he stays there for a while. Where with McClellan, if they don't make the playoffs going into next year, I think he's on the hot seat.
Yeah, I'm marking Kaya down for Desjardins.
Please do.
I honestly think it's McClellan. I think you're right. I think you're right on target. If they don't make the playoffs this year, after trading Hall, after trading Gottlieb, and clearing out that losing mentality, which I think that those players.
Keep talking. I'm going to put Kaya out.
Yeah, okay. Losing those players who are symbolic of that losing mentality, which that seems to be the case, then and they don't make it, I think he's in deep trouble. And I don't know this situation. I mean, they won their first 2 games against Calgary and then have a bad game against Buffalo. And I'm not to say he lost his mind, but it seemed very Herb Brooks of him to go down that road 3 games into the season. It seemed a bit overkill. And
there's a ripple effect. I mean, you heard the guys on Sports Central saying that teams were calling about why they were doing this and breaking the CBA and all of that. There's a ripple effect with this.
Yeah. Third pairing, Jack Capuano, head coach of the New York Islanders, or John Tortorella, head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets?
I'm going to say Capuano.
I think Capuano could be the first casualty. If they're not in a playoff spot by American Thanksgiving, which is always the line of demarcation for trades and firings, he could be out of a job. In spite of the fact that they got through the first round last year and got to the second round with their backup goaltender. I mean, I honestly don't think it's fair in the sense that I blame Garth Snow for the inadequacies of their lineup right now. So Capuano would be a scapegoat, but he's been there a long time, and that's a factor as well.
Yeah, I think that is a factor. I think the seat's hotter there. I think the Tortorella money Columbus isn't going to be so willing to part with. I think he's going to end up being close to living out his deal. And Capuano, like we know, if they're for some reason in last place come Thanksgiving or something close to that, with new ownership, that's going to be a problem.
And think of this. Columbus gave up a second-round pick to get John Tortorella.
Yeah.
Last one. One coach who replaced another. Randy Carlyle in Anaheim or Bruce Boudreau in Minnesota? Who has the shorter leash? I'll go first.
I'm going to say Boudreau.
Yeah, I was going to say I'll go first. Now, I was going to say Boudreau because I can't see Anaheim bringing back Carlyle and firing him this year.
Right.
I think he's safe for at least and this is the thing.
I think they're both safe for a year and a half, 2 years. Like, this is a long game, too.
Yeah, it's a long game, but this is the thing. I think that in Anaheim, if they have a first half of the year as bad as they did last year, the players are going to be blamed and not the coach, because it'll be 2 coaches in a row that this. Well, actually, when Carlisle got fired in 2012, they had a bad streak early in the season, and he was the scapegoat. And then they had a bad streak early in the season last year, recovered, but Boudreau was the scapegoat. At a certain point, maybe they decide they have to break up Perry and Getzlaf. Maybe they have to make some impact move. I think Boudreau. There's not a lot of wiggle room in Minnesota. Those Parise and Suter contracts are untradeable or virtually untradeable.
And I think that's the problem there. I think that seat's hotter because of that. I think the new coach, if they get a new coach in Minnesota someday, will end up having a new goalie too. Like, there's a whole thing there where Anaheim has a lot of pieces set and nothing can go really anywhere either. And since Carlisle has a bit more of a track record with that organization, I think he's safer. I think Boudreaux in a new organization wouldn't be as safe.
Well, good show, Russ. We'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully, Eklund will be feeling a lot better than he does right now. But for some reason, there is a cold going around everywhere.
Yeah.
So, it's just, and we'll have a number of games in the NHL to speak about, and 2 games in Major League Baseball. We could have an American League champion. Sorry, Toronto fans.
Is that the day game? Is the Toronto one the day game?
Yeah, it's a 4:00 in the afternoon game, and then the Cubs Dodgers, I think, is, they're probably playing it at dusk on the West Coast, so it can be at 8 o'clock.
I heard Gord Stellick say on the Hockey Central show he spent $500 on them, and tickets are down to 28 on like StubHub. But here's the tough thing with that: if you really want to go to a game, then you do have to buy the tickets in advance. Yes. If you decided last minute you want to go to something, then StubHub's great, right? And I played that game too. People have sat next to me and had very expensive seats, and I've been much cheaper. But everybody gets stuck once in a while because you really want to go to something and you don't want to risk the possibly being shut out. That's the issue, or being in a really bad seat. So I felt bad for him, but we've all been there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just don't know. The thing is, nowadays, I don't know if I would spend $500 on like if it was a Leaf Stanley Cup final game, I would probably spend big money, since it could be the one time.
I spent that on World Series tickets last year per ticket, right around. I think I want to say it was about $350, in the $350 range.
Yeah,
I did. Team doesn't get to the World Series every year,
Yeah, well, unless you're the New York Yankees.
Yeah, right. When's the last time for them? 2000?
2009.
2009, that's right.
For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.